title of this video is a bit risky, but we're going to talk about a word that's come up quite a lot recently, which is geometry, which I've also heard in quite a few Instagram pages recently as well that aren't yours, but that's another story.
Yeah, it's coming up a little bit more now. It's nice to hear, though. It's nice to hear more people looking at it and talking about it. I think, kind of leading on from what you're saying, obviously a lot of the time when you go in for lessons nowadays, I think a lot of them are in indoor studios, and which we're in today, funnily enough, but a lot of them don't have this much space. And I think that
this is a massive studio.
I think so many things that we're taught to look at and taught to think about are very external, would probably be the way that I'd put it. So risk conditions, planes, all those kind of things. And I think the reason I'm so passionate about what we're talking about is that when my swing was at its best, and I do this like this, like visually from down the line was probably the worst I was hitting it. In regards to, I hit all the positions and planes and risk conditions that everybody's looking for.
So when it was looking great down the line,
I was hitting it off the planet.
like your classic, like Adam Scott down the line view type thing,
But then as soon as you looked at it from here, you realise that it's just it's a glass house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's ready to collapse at any point. Like it could just crumble. And I think as a coach, what I've learned is that you can artificially create the right look here. You can't ever really cheat this. You can't lie from here. And I think a lot of the time when I use a lot of the down the line cues, I'm just kind of using them most of the time to really kind of confirm what I'm seeing from here. Would probably be the way that I'd use it. I just don't think enough people, like, I did a really interesting thing on Instagram where once I posted, if anybody wants a free analysis, which is probably a mistake on my behalf, it took me a while to get through them, but there must have been over 100 people reply, and I reckon out of 100 people I probably had 6 send me face on. And I think if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what people are obsessing over.
Mate, I've had the same thing, like on my skill list. Like multiple times I've had to say I need to see the front on view as well. They just want to send the down the line view and think that's the golf swing. Because that's what they're seeing on TV. They're watching golfers down the line. I think that's the view that they're seeing.
But equally, I think that's partly our fault too. Because I think when you look through fashionable trends in coaching, I think there's more reference points from here that people can talk about.
I.e. shallow in.
So there's more reference points, and it's generally plane or risk condition related. But there's more points to talk about. Whereas I also think that when people talk about shallow, I also think that kind of a lot of people don't realise kind of that this still has to look a certain way, because for example, I can look like kind of shallow from down the line.
Show me like what. So for instance, show me a view that would look, a swing that would look great down the line and would look horrific from this view.
Okay, that would be this one. It would be that from down the line somebody's trying to get shallow, so they'd look this way. So everybody would be like, right through the right forearm, looks amazing, shallow and out. Looks nice, but then from face on, the problem is you'd look like that. So the problem then is low points back, everything's coming up. Strike's going to be problematic.
Stuck underneath. Not good.
And that's what I mean. When people talk about stuck, it's like so many people, in my opinion, look the wrong way to get out of stuck. People always go, right, I go this way, so I'm going to fix it by going more this way. Then all of a sudden it just becomes a nightmare, because it doesn't ever really stop them from looking like this. It just means they look like that and like that,
and then the hands really get away from them.
And it's kind of like we had the conversation after the first lesson. I think was it after lesson 1 or 2 where we had the phone call and you kind of were talking about wanting to still fade it. I think that's just kind of a byproduct of the fact that when you've still got under the gun, because we haven't really done it for long enough, it's like you probably still weren't down enough.
100%.
And the problem is that, to me, the solution's more down than around. The reason you want to feel the fade is because you want to feel around to get the safety in the ground.
I just want to be like,
please. Whereas actually you were hitting it less left when we were in the lessons because it was so pure. Like it was so good, mate, when you flushed it in the lessons. I'm not saying that as like a cheerleader kind of way. It's just like, I've seen enough golf balls hit. I know when a ball's been hit properly or not. Do you know what I mean? It was nice. But and I think like the thing that I always find probably one of the hardest relationships to kind of manage is getting people into that plane whilst managing the attack angle through the shoulders. So the biggest relationship I tend to find is that kind of initial transition period. Like, I like to get people as shallow. The only reason I really like shallow, if I'm honest, is because it gives you the freest pass at the ball to release the club.
Yeah.
And I know that you need to release the club into the ground to keep it stable.
You don't have to make some weird moves to be able to do
You don't
that.
have to do anything to kind of get it back to the ball. If I'm just moving down and in, then I have the freedom then to just stabilise the face more through that pattern, as opposed to trying to stabilise it that way.
Yeah, and people think that is stabilising the face, by the way.
Yeah,
like, it's a classic. They've seen like DJ with his like bowed wrist, and they think, oh, he's stabilising the face. Yeah. There is definitely like the releasing. I think that's another thing. Like, a lot of golfers think that in order to control the face, they have to really hold on for dear life. And if they do throw it and release it, they're going to lose all control.
And they're worried it's going to go left, which is the funny thing, because I actually spend half my initial warm-up overdrawing it, throwing it in to stabilise it. Really? So I limit my draw through releasing it down.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think the other thing that's really interesting, James, is like a lot of people have this perception that because of the way I get people to move, that my players are drawers. They're not all. They're neutral as anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like most of my, but even when you played with me, like my ball flight is neutral.
Yeah, it's just a tiny little push draw.
It's like it falls left. It doesn't. It's not like a big slinger.
And on tour, most of the guys, that's what you see, isn't it? It's so neutral.
It's so neutral, mate. Yeah. Like when somebody says they're fading it, it's like, no, they're not.
It's falling right.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And unless they're really trying to manoeuvre it for a reason, it's generally so neutral, mate.
Yeah.
And I think that's because though on tour, I think there's more of an emphasis on starting the ball online, because like fairways are so narrow that you can't get away with, like, you go and play somewhere like, I don't know, like Clutch or Europro or whatever. Generally, the rough's not tour rough. You can hit it in the rough on a certain side, and you know that sometimes you're missing the rough that side on purpose because you know there's nothing over there. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like when you're playing on tour and you're playing in this and it's like greens are rock hard and running at 13, you need that control.
Yeah.
So they're way better at that. But yeah, going back to kind of the thing that I think a lot of things get wrong is I think it's down to that geometry side of it, where people are so focused on shallowing the plane that then they don't get this angle correct, and they then end up getting so many people dumped underneath and stuck that then all these poor people are then like they're like blocking the life out of it, or they're like throwing the toe at it and getting it like really hooky.
So the easiest way, I guess, to make it look shallow from a completely downline perspective is to just like
go this way.
Is to just go that way.
Because then it gets it.
So how do you get people shallow whilst staying on top of it, which is the key move, right? You want to stay on top of it in a shallow
most people, when you first try and get them, so I go through stages during a lesson, James, like normally. So we'll go, right, let's get you moving, let's do a step drill. Yeah, then I'll kind of like, let's say that person's under and that's why they're shallow. You'll then get them moving better, and then all of a sudden they'll be steep. So then all of a sudden you've got to fix that with the next drill. So a lot of the time for me, what I like to do is like with yourself, you know, we went into the 3-piece drill.
Yeah.
The reason I do that is so that I can stop your arms yanking on it in transition. So the secret, I believe, into getting it in the correct geometry.
Is this like off?
So it's like, you know, when you go off it,
yeah.
For me, even when people move in, what they tend to do, they still tend to pull down.
Should we show this?
Welcome.
Yeah, that was like the big thing. It was like when you told me to get off, on, and hold, in that movement onto the ball, my hands, I'd always lose
come down loads,
yeah. Come down loads.
Yeah.
So it's actually really hard to do that. So you're saying that's one of the key...
That to me is the only way. That's what allows it to stay shallow as you're moving in the geometry I'm talking about. Is that bit there, yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can throw them.
The arms stay, you move
so you get on it, then throw. Exactly.
Then you can throw.
Yeah. Whereas obviously when you're yanking down on that, it also starts getting you spinning out a little bit, which is then why the plane gets too in front of you on the way down. So if you get there and you move in but you pull, that's it. It comes down too much. So turn away from me, James, and show this, and let's just look at it. So make a backswing for me. Right, if you now kind of like move in but pull down at the same time, it like gets way behind you there in delivery.
Yep.
But the thing is like what it will do is normally if you're pulling with any kind of speed, you won't be able to do it in the plane that you just did it. Yep. What will happen is the plane will get steep initially, then fall behind you.
Yeah,
which will pull down in
like,
front of you. Yeah, exactly. It'll move more that way, yeah, and then you'll dump it under. So whereas if you go to the top for me, right, now move in with the arms up, then swing it, so throw it, then it comes down and in front of you at the right time as well.
Off,
in,
hold,
then throw.
and then it's like just in front.
It's in front. So when you talk about getting stuck, I'm like, well, the problem is, James, it's not because you're not swinging left enough or because you're not trying to fade it. It's because it's under or you've pulled. Like there's one of those things that get it stuck behind you. It's not necessarily what you think it is, but the terms that you would come back with are always ones that you hear all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I need to get over it more. I need to fade it more because that will get me more on top. Yeah. But the problem is, by the time it gets into delivery, because you've spun out, it will then actually be more behind you.
Yeah.
Then you start getting all kinds of problems.
What I work on a lot, particularly like me and Brandon talk about these images all the time. So when we first started working together, he would almost get a little bit steep here, but then he would back under it, and in delivery he'd be way from the inside and stuck.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you watch him, he's more kind of like here, he gets it like shallower in transition through here.
Yeah.
But then by the time he's in delivery, he's actually got the club more in front and on top of it.
Yeah.
Then he covers the ball, then it exits left and it comes out then with zero flip on it like this. Whereas I've got images of him, mate, from like January where the exit, it's literally kind of like that.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just where he's exactly what you're talking about in regards to the deceleration, because he's got it from so far in the inside, he's having to flip it around himself.
Yeah.
And that's why he was hitting too big of a draw. Whereas now,
so you've neutralised his pattern quite a lot
honestly,
now.
I've just been in Palm Beach with him for 3
days.
days.
I've seen some of the swings he's been posting. They look alright, don't they?
Honestly, whether it's draw, fade, high, low, it's just like that.
Yeah.
Dead straight. And that's why you look at him then towards the end of the year, in my opinion, that had the biggest impact on why he started making so many more birdies. So if you look in like the first 12 events of the year, again, I look into my players a lot, like I like to know. You look in the first 12 events he played before I saw him, it was like, I think he was 23 under, combined. You look at the last 10 events that we did together and he was 92 under.
Yeah.
And that's because he was making just so many more birdies. But in my opinion, that's
because
because
attack flags.
Obviously, he putted great as well in certain weeks. You can't but if you look at him now, like it's a lot easier to be more aggressive when you're hitting a 3-yard draw to a 20-yard draw.
Yeah, you can't hook 20-yard draws into back right pin positions.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like he would try, he did at times, but like and I think the thing is just with that move. It's like, I just think it's probably the most important move in golf. I just think when you can get yourself in that position, like in here, where your shoulders are down, left leg, left knee, left foot, nose, sternum, belt buckle all match up, it just allows you, no matter how you feel, it just allows you to get to the ground safely and low point where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of the time, most people are just in trouble. The minute that belt buckle starts to race out ahead of this, kind of your nose at the top of your neck, that's when you start getting all kind of strike and delivery issues. And like you rightfully said, it's like the feeling of stuck. That's where it comes from. And I just think, like I said, going back to why we started this particular video, I think it's just because so many people are working so hard from here that they just forget that this matters. And this, if you want to know what your body's doing, most people don't want to see this because they don't like what it shows them. You can make that bit, even when you're not playing great, you can make that bit look good.
Yeah.
Even though it's not doing
they just don't see this view on TV when they're looking at their favourite player.
Very rare, mate, dear.
So start here. You always start here, don't you?
I literally
like you always start here
and
then you'll reference back some of this stuff just to see if the club is doing what you want to do. But it starts with the body movement from this side.
Yeah. And the main reason I do the down the line is because when I fix it from here, I need to know that it's still doing the right things here, because if it's pitching a little steep here, that's going to affect the release directly. Yeah. So I always want it to be, I like it to be shallow, so because it's easier. At the end of the day, if I've got the club here, it's easier to throw it, isn't it? If I've got the club there, I can't. I can't throw it, so I'm going to hold and turn. So, there you go.
So there you go. That was a roundabout way, and I know we keep going into different avenues, but like we're just interested in the topics.
Absolutely, mate.
So the front on view, you'll see the meat of it, and then the down the line view. So if you're looking at, if your coach is just telling you the down the line view, this wasn't meant to be just a video where we're like trying to bitch or whatever.
No.
It's only titled that because I think like there's certain coaches that will just look at one view. So the golf swing needs to be looked at from all angles. So loads more content coming. Subscribe. See you soon.